The house was too quiet. It was unsettling, an eerie kind of silence that crept up on Avery as she stepped over the threshold, dragging her suitcase behind her. She had just returned from weeks of taking care of her ailing mother, a woman who had grown frailer by the day, slipping into a deep, painful silence that mirrored the void now stretching before her. Avery felt the emptiness all around her. This was the home she had once shared with her husband, Grant, and their daughter, Charlotte. It should have been warm, filled with the usual noise, dinner being prepared, the hum of the TV, the chatter of everyday life. Instead, there was nothing. No greeting, no words, no warmth. Only a suffocating quiet. Her instincts began to gnaw at her. Something was wrong. A faint thumping sound echoed through the house, dull, rhythmic, almost as if someone was trying to get her attention. It seemed to come from the basement. She froze for a moment, listening intently. The noise was faint but persistent, like a muffled thud that bounced off the walls. Avery's heart skipped a beat. She tried to push away the growing sense of dread, but it settled into her chest, a weight she couldn't ignore. Every fiber of her being told her that something terrible awaited her. She dropped her suitcase by the door, her pulse quickening as she moved toward the stairs. The thumping continued, each beat louder than the last, each one louder than her own heartbeat. She reached the basement door and hesitated, her hand hovering over the cold metal handle. The air around her seemed to grow heavier, thicker, and for the first time in a long while, Avery felt truly afraid. But she had to know. She had to see. With a quick tug, she wrenched the door open. The stairs leading down into the basement were steep, but Avery barely noticed, her gaze fixed on the bottom, where shadows danced and writhed. Her breath hitched as she descended into the dim, musty air. Grant was there, huddled on the floor in the corner of the room, his body slumped and weak. His clothes were dirty, his face gaunt, and his eyes were wide, frantic. When he saw her, he tried to stand, his limbs shaking with the effort, but he collapsed back onto the cold concrete floor. Avery, his voice cracked, weak and desperate. Avery, help me. Avery rushed to him, her heart racing, a wave of disbelief sweeping over her. Grant had always been the strong one, the protector. She had never seen him like this, vulnerable, helpless. And worse, the door to the basement was locked from the outside. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the marks on the door, the broken locks, and the faintest smell of something unfamiliar. She couldn't make sense of it. None of this made sense. Grant, what happened? She demanded, her voice trembling. He looked up at her, eyes wide with panic, but his words were slurred, his speech almost incoherent. I don't know, Avery. I was locked in here. She did this. Avery's pulse spiked. Who? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Charlotte, Grant murmured, his voice barely audible now. Charlotte, she locked me in here. She. The words hung in the air like a curse. Avery felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Her own daughter. Charlotte? Her stomach churned, but she tried to steady herself. This couldn't be real. She couldn't possibly be hearing him correctly. But the look in his eyes, the way his body trembled, told her something far darker was unfolding in her life. Avery helped him to his feet, supporting him as they made their way out of the basement. The house seemed even colder now, emptier than before. There was an odd feeling in the air, a presence she couldn't shake, as if something had been left behind, something important. She glanced around the house, her mind racing. The living room looked untouched, but there were small signs of disturbance. A picture frame slightly askew, a chair out of place. But it wasn't just the mess that disturbed her, it was the way the house felt. There was something missing. Someone. Someone who should have been here. She glanced back at Grant, still disoriented. What are you talking about? Charlotte? Why would she? Grant's response came in a whisper, a barely audible sound that made her blood run cold. She's involved in something, Avery. I don't know. But she's been hiding it from you. From all of us. Avery's chest tightened. The floor beneath her feet seemed to give way, and a cold panic gripped her heart. Could it really be true? Could her own flesh and blood be capable of this? The house felt alien now, like a place she no longer recognized. Everything she thought she knew about her family, her life, was being shattered piece by piece. How had she missed the signs? How had she let this happen? She helped Grant upstairs, the thumping in her chest matching the rhythm of the strange noise that had lured her down into the basement. But now the sounds seemed different, somehow. It wasn't just the noise of the house, it was a warning. A cry for help. As she sat him down on the couch, Avery surveyed the room once again. Her gaze drifted to the door, to the marks on the frame, to the lingering smell of something unfamiliar. Something was very wrong, and the more she thought about it, the more her suspicion grew. She felt a chill down her spine as she noticed an unfamiliar object on the floor, something she hadn't seen before. A key. The key to the basement, no doubt. Her mind was racing. There was no way Charlotte could be involved in something like this. No way her daughter could be capable of such cruelty. But the evidence was staring her in the face, and the more she thought about it, the more she realized that this was not just an isolated incident. Grant, I need you to tell me everything. I need to understand. But Grant couldn't answer. His eyes were glazing over, the fever taking hold of him once again. But Avery had already begun to suspect something far worse than she could have ever imagined. And she knew, deep down, that she couldn't trust anyone, especially not her own family. As she glanced at Grant, the realization hit her hard. Charlotte was the only one left. But why? What had happened to her daughter? And how far had this madness gone? Avery's mind was spinning with questions, each one more impossible than the last. And yet, the worst was yet to come. The door to the basement had been locked from the outside. Grant's frantic whispers only confirmed the nightmare she'd hoped wasn't real. Her own daughter had betrayed her. Charlotte, she whispered, her heart sinking further. But there was no turning back now. Avery had to confront the truth. She had to face whatever was waiting for her, no matter how terrifying the truth might be. As the weight of the revelation settled in, Avery's breath caught in her throat. The full extent of the betrayal was still ahead of her. And the hardest part was about to begin. Avery stood in the dimly lit living room, Grant's frail body slumped in the chair beside her. His eyes were wide, but the panic that had overtaken him earlier had settled into a strange, exhausted calm. He was still trying to recover from whatever hell he'd been through in that basement, but his mind was far from clear. Every few moments, he would mutter something, a name. Charlotte, he whispered again, his voice barely audible. She did this. The weight of the words hit Avery like a truck. She sat frozen for a moment, struggling to comprehend what he was saying. Her mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of this impossible puzzle. Her daughter. Charlotte. How could this be true? Grant, what are you saying? Charlotte? How could she? Avery trailed off, her throat tightening. She wanted to scream, to shake him, to force him to explain, but she could only sit there, her world crumbling around her. Grant's head lolled back against the chair as he closed his eyes, exhaustion and delirium taking over. He was too weak to provide any clarity. But the silence in the room hung heavily, like a suffocating fog. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to believe that this was all a mistake, a misunderstanding. But deep down, she knew something was terribly wrong. Avery stood up abruptly, pacing the floor, her mind spinning. How could Charlotte be involved in something so dark, so twisted? She had always been the perfect daughter, kind, polite, sweet. She had never shown signs of the cruelty that Grant was suggesting. But then Avery remembered the little things, the way Charlotte had become distant in recent months, how she'd pulled away, how she'd started keeping secrets. Maybe it was all there, right in front of her, but Avery had refused to see it. The thought of her daughter being capable of something so monstrous made her stomach churn. She stopped pacing, staring at the floor, her heart pounding in her chest. No. This couldn't be true. Avery had to hear more, understand the full picture. She needed answers, and she needed them now. Grant stirred again, his words slurred but clear. She locked me in there. Left me to rot in that basement. She said she needed the money, needed it all. To pay her debts. I don't know how it got this far. Avery's legs went weak beneath her as she stumbled back to the chair. What do you mean? What debts? Grant, please, you're not making sense. I'm telling you. She's been lying to you. To all of us, he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. It's all about money. She's been taking it from the accounts, taking from everything we built. I couldn't stop her. The room spun around Avery as she sat there, stunned. She couldn't breathe. The betrayal was so profound, it felt as if the ground had been ripped from under her. She had trusted Charlotte. She had believed in her. And now, it felt like the earth had shifted, exposing the ugly truth beneath. Grant continued, his words becoming more disjointed. She used your mother's illness. All that time. And she took it all. The money. The power. It's all hers now. Avery's chest tightened. How had this happened? How had Charlotte turned into someone capable of such manipulation? The shock was overwhelming, but something deeper lurked beneath her surprise, rage. Avery's anger flared as she began to understand the depth of her daughter's betrayal. Charlotte had done this. She had ruined their lives, destroyed everything they had. Avery had to confront her. She had to face her own flesh and blood, and it terrified her. But she knew she could not back down. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Her mind was racing, but her heart ached for the daughter she once knew. The daughter she loved. How could she have been so blind? Avery's mind flashed back to the past, Charlotte's early years, the times they shared, the moments that once felt like pure happiness. But now, those memories seemed hollow, tainted by the truth that her daughter was capable of this kind of darkness. Avery's fingers tightened around the edge of the chair as she fought to keep her emotions in check. She had to be strong. She couldn't fall apart now. With resolve building in her chest, Avery turned back to Grant. I'm going to find out the truth. I will get to the bottom of this. And if Charlotte is behind this, if she's really done what you're saying, I'll make sure she faces the consequences. Grant's eyes flickered, but he seemed too tired to argue. He could barely keep his eyes open, but Avery could see the fear and regret in them. Don't trust her. She's dangerous now. Avery nodded, though her heart was heavy with the weight of his words. She knew she had to act. But how? How could she confront Charlotte, the daughter she had raised, the daughter she had loved? How could she expose her, tear down the very foundation of the family they had once shared? Avery got up, walking towards the hallway, her steps firm now. She needed to find more answers, more clues. She couldn't leave it like this. She couldn't let Charlotte slip through the cracks, couldn't allow her to continue with whatever plan she was carrying out. As she opened the drawer in the hallway, her fingers brushed over a small, cold metal object. It was a key, small and unremarkable, but it felt like a bomb in her hands. Avery stared at it, wondering what it could open. The basement door? A hidden room? Her heart raced as she examined the key. This was it. This was the clue she had been waiting for. She hurried to the door in the back of the house, the door she had never thought twice about. It was locked, but the key slid smoothly into the lock. The click of the lock turning was deafening in the stillness of the house. With trembling hands, Avery pushed the door open, stepping into the small, hidden room. Inside, the walls were lined with papers, financial documents, bank statements, accounts. Avery's breath caught as she flipped through the papers, each one revealing more of the twisted web Charlotte had spun. There were names, numbers, and transactions that didn't make sense. But one thing was clear: Charlotte had been siphoning money from the family, hiding it away for herself. Avery felt sick to her stomach. Her daughter had been playing them all, and Avery had been too blind to see it. The betrayal was deeper than she could have ever imagined. And the worst part was that it was only the beginning. The doorbell rang, pulling her from her thoughts. Avery rushed to the door, opening it to find Detective Mia Westbrook standing in the doorway. "I'm here to start the investigation," Mia said, her expression serious. Avery nodded, her mind racing. The truth was coming out now. There was no turning back. "This is bigger than we thought," Detective Westbrook said, as she surveyed the house. "We're going to need a plan." Avery's heart sank. This was only the beginning. And she was determined to see it through, no matter where it led. Avery sat across from Detective Mia Westbrook, her hands tightly gripping the edges of the table. The sterile office, with its cold fluorescent lights and the faint smell of coffee, felt miles away from the chaos that had consumed her life. She had expected the truth to be hard to face, but the weight of it was suffocating. As Mia flipped through the files before her, Avery's heart hammered in her chest. "I can't believe this," Avery whispered, more to herself than to the detective. "How could Charlotte? My own daughter?" Mia glanced up at her, her expression stern yet compassionate. "I understand this is hard to process, Avery. But we're making progress. We've found enough to start connecting some dots." She paused, then added, "Charlotte's involvement in something much bigger than just family betrayal is becoming clearer." Avery's stomach dropped. She had expected her daughter to be involved in some petty lies, maybe even a few missteps. But this? This was something far more sinister. "What do you mean by something bigger?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mia handed her a file with detailed financial records, each page heavier than the last. "We've traced large withdrawals from your personal accounts. Some of the amounts don't even make sense. We believe Charlotte has been funneling money into offshore accounts for months." Avery's breath hitched. "Offshore accounts?" She shook her head in disbelief. "She's been doing this for how long?" "Longer than we expected," Mia said, pulling out more documents. "There are also fraudulent medical forms that show Charlotte manipulated both you and Grant. She was pretending to care for your husband while siphoning money right under your nose." Avery stared at the papers in front of her, her mind racing. This was not the daughter she knew. "How did I not see this?" she whispered, her heart shattering as the image of her loving daughter crumbled before her. The Charlotte she had raised, the one who used to smile at her, hold her hand, and call her mom, was now a stranger, someone capable of this monstrous betrayal. Mia's voice brought her back to the moment. It's not just about the money. Charlotte has deeper connections to a known money laundering operation. We've connected her to a criminal syndicate. She's been using her family as a cover for something far more dangerous. Avery's head spun, the words hitting her like a tidal wave. Charlotte was involved in organized crime? Her daughter, who she had always believed to be innocent, was now a criminal mastermind? It felt like a nightmare, one that she couldn't wake up from. What does that mean for us? Avery asked, the dread in her voice palpable. It means that this case is bigger than just a family issue. We need to proceed carefully, Mia said, her gaze hardening. I'm starting to worry for your safety. As we uncover more, we'll need to take more precautions. The room seemed to close in around Avery. The anger was there, the betrayal too, but beneath it all was a deep sorrow. How had she missed this? How had Charlotte gotten so far without anyone noticing? Avery, we need you to stay vigilant, Mia continued. We've got to trace these connections before Charlotte can cover her tracks completely. Avery nodded, her mind still reeling. She had trusted her daughter with everything, and now Charlotte had used that trust to destroy them. How had she gotten this far? What kind of hold did Charlotte have on the people involved? As the detective spoke, Avery's mind drifted back to moments with Charlotte, the birthday dinners, the holidays, the everyday life they had shared. The little lies, the secrets, they were all there, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't make sense until now. Every seemingly innocent gesture now felt like a warning. Had Charlotte been playing her all along? The sound of Mia's voice cut through her thoughts. We've also found a potential lead. A former business associate of Charlotte's, Aiden Miller, has contacted us. Avery's brow furrowed. Aiden Miller? Yeah, Mia replied. He's been in contact with us. Says Charlotte was involved in setting up a fake investment scheme. It looks like she was targeting people close to you, Avery. Investors who were looking for legitimate opportunities, but got scammed instead. Aiden's name sent a chill down Avery's spine. She'd heard that name before, but she hadn't realized the connection until now. How could Charlotte do this to people we know? To our friends? Mia exhaled sharply. It's all part of her plan, Avery. She's been using the people she's closest to for her schemes. And it's getting bigger by the day. Avery's mind was spinning. The weight of the betrayal was unbearable, but it was nothing compared to the fear beginning to creep in. If Charlotte could do all this, what else was she capable of? The detective continued, we've uncovered a connection to Grant's business partners as well. Charlotte has managed to involve a lot of people. The investigation is starting to take a darker turn. The idea of a network of deceit so vast, spanning beyond her family, was terrifying. But it was the thought of how dangerous Charlotte had become that truly unsettled Avery. She didn't know who to trust anymore. What's the next step? Avery asked, her voice shaky. We've got a lead. We think Charlotte might be trying to flee the country. We received an anonymous tip-off that she's planning to leave soon. Avery's heart skipped a beat. Flee? Charlotte was running? The realization hit her like a slap in the face. She had to act. She couldn't let her daughter escape, not without answers. Mia glanced at her, her voice urgent. We might be able to stop her at the airport. But we need to move quickly. The room grew cold as Avery's thoughts raced. The urgency was overwhelming. Could she confront Charlotte now? Could she handle it, knowing that her daughter was about to disappear? I'll do it, Avery said suddenly, her voice steady with newfound resolve. I need to see her. I need answers, and I can't wait anymore. Mia nodded, a sense of understanding passing between them. "We'll be right behind you. But be careful, Avery. Charlotte's more dangerous than we thought." Avery took a deep breath, steeling herself. It was time. She had to face the truth head-on. She would not let Charlotte slip away again. As she walked out of the room, Avery's heart beat faster. She knew that confronting Charlotte would change everything, but it was a step she had to take. She could no longer live in the shadows of uncertainty. The truth was out there, and it was time to face it, no matter how painful it would be. Avery sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by piles of Charlotte's personal belongings. The room felt heavier now, burdened with secrets she was only just beginning to uncover. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the papers, the weight of each document pressing harder on her chest. It was late, too late, in fact, but the truth had to come out, no matter how much it hurt. Avery paused as she uncovered a stack of encrypted files. They were hidden deep within Charlotte's private drawer, buried under a layer of old journals and photographs. Her heart raced as she looked through the encrypted documents, knowing that whatever was in them was something Charlotte wanted to keep hidden. With a feeling of dread settling in her gut, Avery pulled up the files on her laptop. As the passwords unlocked, her eyes scanned the screen, reading through transaction records, strange accounts, and financial dealings that were far beyond anything she could have imagined. She felt sick. This wasn't just a betrayal, this was a conspiracy. Charlotte had been involved in a world of crime she'd never even suspected. Money laundering, fraudulent accounts, secret deals with shadowy figures, it was all there, clear as day. And it all pointed back to Charlotte. The sweet daughter Avery had raised was now a key player in something much darker than anyone could have guessed. Tension built in Avery's mind. This wasn't just about her family anymore, it was about something much bigger, something more dangerous than she could handle alone. She glanced at the clock on the wall. It was past midnight, but sleep was a distant thought. The more she uncovered, the harder it became to breathe. How deep did this go? Was Charlotte alone in this? Or was her whole family involved? A sudden realization hit her, Grant. Her husband. She had to confront him. She couldn't believe she had missed the signs. But now, everything was coming into focus. Charlotte had not only been playing her family, she had been playing everyone. The next day, Avery found herself standing in front of Grant, the man she had trusted for so long. His face was pale, his eyes avoiding hers as she laid out the evidence. It had taken everything in her not to break down, to not lose her composure, but the truth was clear now, even to him. "Grant, what the hell is going on?" Avery's voice trembled with the anger and betrayal she felt. "What have you been involved in?" He shifted uncomfortably, his hands clasped tightly together. He was silent for a moment, but when he spoke, it was with a voice full of guilt. "Avery, I didn't know how deep it went. Charlotte, she promised me a future. She said she could fix everything. She promised me wealth, security. I never thought it would come to this." Avery felt her stomach twist. "You knew, didn't you? You were part of it." Grant's eyes dropped to the floor. "I didn't know it was this bad. I thought I was helping. But I see now. I was just as manipulated as you." The tears threatened to spill, but Avery fought them back. She couldn't let him off that easily. "You put your trust in her. But what about me, Grant? What about us?" She shook her head, her voice breaking. "I've been fighting for us, for this family. And this is what you've done? You've let her use you like this?" He looked up at her, his face stricken with shame. "Avery, I'm sorry. I should have stopped it. I never should have let her get so deep into this, but I was. I was blinded by what she promised. The more Grant spoke, the more Avery's heart shattered. But she couldn't stay in this moment of weakness for long. She had to stay focused, stay strong. The truth had to come out. There was no going back now. As she left Grant to process everything, Avery found herself retracing her steps. There had to be more. The financial papers, the hidden accounts, there had to be someone else behind all of this. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. Her instincts were right. The conspiracy ran deeper. As she looked through more documents, Avery uncovered a shocking revelation. Charlotte's business dealings weren't just limited to her own schemes. Avery found a hidden network, companies, offshore accounts, all connected to Grant's former business partner. A web of lies, involving cryptocurrency schemes and illegal transactions. Charlotte had manipulated everyone, not just her family, but her father's business associates too. This was far beyond what Avery could have imagined. Her heart raced as the realization hit her. It wasn't just about the money, it was about power, control. And someone, somewhere, was pulling the strings. But who? As Avery sat there, piecing together the fragments of what she'd found, the doorbell rang. It was a detective. Avery's pulse quickened when she saw Mia Westbrook standing in her doorway, holding more papers. I need to show you something, Mia said, stepping inside. We've found more evidence. Avery barely had time to sit down before Mia laid out more financial records, each one pointing to Charlotte's increasing involvement in a money laundering operation. It's worse than we thought, Avery, Mia said, her voice cold. We're talking international operations here. Charlotte isn't just running a small scam, she's involved with a global criminal network. Avery felt her breath catch in her throat. It was all coming together in a horrifying way. Charlotte had done this to her family, no, to everyone. She'd ruined lives, manipulated everyone around her, and now Avery was left holding the pieces of her broken world. Just when Avery thought the investigation couldn't get any worse, Mia received a call. Someone named Aidan Miller, a former business associate of Charlotte, had come forward with even more explosive information. He was willing to testify against Charlotte. As Mia spoke to him on the phone, Avery's mind raced. Aidan's name brought a cold chill to her spine. He knew Charlotte well, and he'd been involved in some of the most dangerous deals. What was he about to reveal? I'll meet with him, Avery said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. She had to know everything. The more she found out, the more dangerous it all became. The deeper the rabbit hole went, and now there was no way to stop it. After a few tense moments, Mia hung up. He'll meet us tomorrow. He says he has information that could break the case wide open. Avery nodded, her heart pounding. But she wasn't ready for the bombshell that would come next. As the door clicked shut behind her, she took a breath and readied herself for what lay ahead. The final betrayal was still out there, waiting. And she was going to find it. Avery could feel her pulse pounding in her ears as she stood at the doorstep, her hand frozen in midair as she prepared to knock. The weight of the confrontation ahead made her hesitate. Charlotte, her own daughter, the girl she'd raised, was about to face the consequences of her betrayal. Avery had spent years building a life she thought was stable, one that she believed was built on love and trust. But now, everything was shattering before her eyes. She had to confront Charlotte. There was no avoiding it. Avery knew it was the only way to get answers. The secrets, the lies, the money laundering schemes, they were all part of Charlotte's world now. Avery had spent days in a fog of disbelief, but now, standing here, she could no longer ignore the truth. The truth that Charlotte had betrayed her, her father, and their entire family for her own gain. Avery knocked. The sound echoed in her ears, harsh and final. A moment later, Charlotte opened the door, her eyes wary, her face a mask of carefully controlled emotions. "Mom," Charlotte said softly, stepping aside to let Avery in. "I know why you're here." Avery walked past her daughter, feeling the cold distance between them more sharply than ever. "We need to talk," Avery said, her voice firm, though the words felt foreign in her mouth. Charlotte didn't respond immediately, but led her mother into the living room. Avery could feel her heartbeat thudding louder in her chest, a sound that seemed to reverberate through her entire body. She turned to face Charlotte, her words sharp, "I know everything. About the money, the accounts, what you've been doing behind my back." Charlotte flinched but quickly regained her composure. "Mom, she began, but Avery cut her off. "No," Avery interrupted, her voice breaking. "You don't get to justify this. Not now. You've been manipulating all of us, and I deserve to know why." Charlotte's eyes flickered with something Avery couldn't quite place, guilt, perhaps, or something darker. "I didn't mean for it to get so out of control, Mom. You have to understand, I was just trying to secure our future. Everyone was so focused on money, on security, and I thought I could make it work." Avery's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "By betraying your own family? You thought you could secure our future by ruining everything we've built?" Charlotte's face crumbled, but she didn't back down. "It wasn't just about me. It was about us. All of us. I didn't want to see you and Dad struggle anymore. I didn't want us to live paycheck to paycheck. I thought I could fix everything by taking control." The pain Avery felt surged to the surface. Her own daughter, the girl she had trusted, was standing here, offering excuses for betraying everything they held dear. "Charlotte," she said, her voice trembling with fury, "you ruined everything. You've destroyed our family." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered, but Avery didn't want to hear it. Not anymore. The excuses were just another part of the lies. "Tell me the truth," Avery demanded, her breath shallow. "Who else is involved in this? Who's been helping you?" Charlotte hesitated. She glanced away, her lips trembling. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she admitted, "I didn't do this alone, Mom. There's someone else, someone powerful, who's been pushing me. I couldn't stop. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I wasn't. I'm sorry." Avery's heart sank. The betrayal was deeper than she had ever imagined. The truth was worse than she had feared. It wasn't just Charlotte's greed or ambition at play, there were larger forces involved, dark, powerful influences that had preyed on her vulnerability. Avery staggered backward, her mind spinning as she tried to process the new revelation. The weight of Charlotte's confession pressed down on her chest, suffocating her. "Who?" Avery demanded, her voice cracking. "Who's been controlling you, Charlotte?" Charlotte hesitated again, then whispered, "Dad's business partner. Grant's old friend. He's the one who set everything up. He's the one who made sure everything was in place." The truth hit Avery like a freight train. The trust she had placed in her husband, the belief that they were partners in every sense of the word, it all felt like a cruel joke now. Her husband, too, was complicit in this twisted game. She had known that he was hiding something, but this? This was too much to bear. Avery turned away, fighting the tears that threatened to fall. She couldn't look at Charlotte anymore. The daughter she had raised had been manipulated by a criminal, and now, her husband was involved. Avery had trusted both of them, and they had shattered her world. Grant, Avery muttered under her breath, the name a weight she could barely lift. She couldn't confront Charlotte without first confronting him. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. She had to process this, had to find out more. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Mia Westbrook, the detective. "Avery," Mia said, her voice urgent. "We've uncovered something big. You need to come in. There's more, much more, than we thought. The financial ties. They go deep. And there's a figure we're chasing who might just be the key to everything." Avery felt a chill run through her. "Who?" she demanded. "We've traced it to a larger criminal operation, Avery," Mia said. "Your daughter's not just involved in a scheme. This goes far beyond what we imagined. It's bigger than you think." Avery stood frozen. Everything was falling apart, and she had no idea how to stop it. But one thing was clear, she couldn't let this go. She couldn't let Charlotte or Grant, or anyone, get away with what they'd done. She had to expose the truth, no matter what it cost her. The chapter ended with Avery standing at a crossroads. Her heart heavy with the weight of her choices, she knew that the next step would define everything. She was done being passive. She was done hiding. It was time to face the darkness and take control of her life, even if it meant destroying everything she had ever known. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation as Avery stepped inside. Her heart pounded in her chest, each step heavier than the last. This was it, the final moment. The years of betrayal, the lies, the unraveling of everything she had known, were about to be judged. The winter light streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows on the floor as the judge called the proceedings to order. She sat down quietly, her eyes flicking nervously to the prosecution's table. The tension in the room was palpable, everyone waiting for the final act of this family tragedy to unfold. The prosecutor stood up, his voice steady as he summarized the crimes of Charlotte Charlie Carlyle and Grant Carlyle. They had been caught in a tangled web of deceit, financial schemes, and manipulations that reached far beyond their own family. Avery could barely bring herself to listen. The truth of it all, her own flesh and blood being held accountable for such a betrayal, was too much to bear. The defense tried to shift the blame, painting Charlotte as a victim. They claimed that she had been coerced by forces beyond her control. Grant, too, insisted that he had been manipulated, that his participation in the scheme had been born out of fear and desperation. But Avery knew better. She knew the truth, and her resolve hardened. As the courtroom fell into silence, Avery felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. The truth was now in the hands of others. The world was about to see what had been kept hidden for so long. Have you ever waited for a moment where everything you believed in is finally judged? Avery's internal question echoed in her mind, her heart tightening. It wasn't just the truth about Charlotte and Grant anymore. It was about her own choices, her own responsibility in all of this. The walls she had built around herself were crumbling. Then came the testimony. Detective Mia Westbrook stood to present the final piece of evidence, the recorded confession from Aiden Miller. The courtroom was silent as the tape played, Charlotte's face draining of all color as the words filled the room. The jury sat motionless, absorbing the truth. The voice on the tape confirmed everything. Charlotte and her network of criminals were at the center of a massive scheme, siphoning money, manipulating, and betraying those closest to them. Avery sat frozen as Grant's testimony followed. His confession shattered whatever public image he had left. He admitted to being complicit, acknowledging his role in deceiving Avery. "I did it for us," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was saving us, but I was wrong." Avery's heart twisted as his words hit her like a freight train. The man she had once trusted, the man who had stood beside her through everything, had turned out to be as much a part of the lie as Charlotte. The room felt smaller as she reflected on everything she had believed in. I didn't just lose a daughter, Avery thought, I lost a whole foundation I believed in. Her world had been built on those false foundations, and now it was all coming apart. Would you ever testify against someone you once trusted implicitly? Avery's mind asked as she watched the devastation unfold. The question lingered in her mind as the weight of the trial pushed her to the edge of despair. But then, just as the moment seemed to be over, Charlotte stood. Her voice cracked as she called out to Avery. "Mom," she begged, tears streaming down her face, "please, you were always my safety net. Don't let them take me away. I was trying to protect us. I was trying to make things better." The courtroom went silent. All eyes were on Avery. She felt her heart tighten in her chest. The plea from her daughter was raw, heartbreaking. It was everything Avery had feared. Would she forgive Charlotte? Could she protect her from the consequences of her actions, or would she finally demand justice and break free from the tangled mess of lies? Avery's mind raced. She stood up slowly, her legs trembling. She could feel the eyes of everyone on her as she walked to the front of the courtroom. The room was silent, except for the sound of her own breath. She couldn't protect Charlotte from this. Not anymore. "Charlotte," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "I loved you. I gave you everything I had. But what you've done, what you've put this family through, goes beyond forgiveness. You made a choice, and now, so must I, justice has to be served." The room seemed to hold its breath as Avery gave her victim impact statement. The words she spoke were painful, but necessary. She had to do this. She had to stop the cycle of manipulation that had been part of her family for so long. The truth was out now. Charlotte and Grant would face the consequences. As the jury deliberated, Avery's heart raced. When the verdict finally came, it was everything she had hoped for, but it didn't come without its cost. "Guilty," the foreman said, his voice firm. Charlotte and Grant were convicted on multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Charlotte's expression collapsed as the words sank in. Grant, too, lowered his head, the weight of the truth too much to bear. Avery sat back in her chair, exhaling a long, slow breath. The press cameras flashed, capturing the moment. It was over. But in the silence of the courtroom, Avery couldn't help but feel a deep, aching loss. Her family was shattered, her trust broken beyond repair. Yet, there was relief too. It was the end of one chapter, and the beginning of another. After the trial, Avery sat in the quiet of her now empty house. The silence was deafening, but it felt like the first real peace she had in years. She began to unpack boxes, things she'd kept hidden away. Among them, she found her mother's journal, filled with memories of a time long past. She ran her fingers over the pages and then took out a fresh piece of paper, writing a letter, "I am no longer defined by someone else's lies." Avery made calls to a women's foundation, signing up for community leadership. She wasn't just going to survive, she was going to thrive. As she looked around the house, the basement door that had once been locked now had a bright window overlooking the backyard. It was a small change, but it symbolized everything that was possible now. A new beginning. The wind blew through the open window as Avery stepped outside into the cool, early spring air. She could feel the weight of the past lifting as she walked, snow melting around her. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. She turned to look at the horizon, her eyes steady and full of determination. "This is only the beginning," she said softly to herself, her heart full of hope.